Welcome to our second week and third recorded lecture for Intro to Mobile Devices. Today we're going to take a look at mobile development steps, what is an integrated development environment, and then we're going to take a look at our assignments for this semester. And our assignments deal with things like UI quality and general quality of an app. So we're going to take a look at both Android and Apple's quality guidelines and UI guidelines. And we'll look at some examples in real life of maybe good and bad UI design and what we can learn from it. What's interesting about UI design, that is user interface design, is that many people, it's like driving. If you ask the average person, are you a better than average driver or a worse than average driver? You'll find about 8 out of 10 people consider themselves to be better than average at driving. Now, obviously, that's not possible because average would mean about 50% or better, 50% or worse. UI design is similar. A lot of times we don't know our own weaknesses and we think that we're better than average and maybe we're not. And I'll confess, I know there are places where I'm weak, and as with any of us, we could all, maybe learn a few tricks that will make our UI more appealing. This is very important because on a limited real estate application like a phone, we have to be very good at UI design. We have to very carefully consider what's natural, what's intuitive to a user. So starting off, let's take a look at mobile development steps. And we'll go into a little more detail on this when we go through our application design. I like what Apple has laid out in their application design, their steps of application design. And by the way, we know that this course, Intro to Mobile Design, is platform agnostic. So this isn't an Apple development course or an iPhone or Android or Windows Phone development course. These are just general concepts. Now, me personally, I have an Android phone and an Android development environment set up. So a lot of the examples that I will show are from Android, but that doesn't mean it's an Android course. It's just a way to show an example. So, to be fair to all sides, the material that I do when I research for this course, the material that I look at Android, iPhone, and the others as well, and others like Cordova, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So first of all, let's think of a concept with a mobile app. What problem are you solving? What is it why are users going to want your application? And notice I said the word user. That's probably one of the most important things to define very early on. And in Plant Places Mobile, by the way, this week I do have my emulator up, so bring it over here. You can't see the whole thing at once, but this is Plant Places Mobile in the Android emulator. So there we go. Took a second to light up. In Plant Places Mobile, that was one of the more difficult things to figure out, to be honest with you. Who are the users? They are administrators, which is basically me, my wife, Steve Foltz at the Cincinnati Zoo, and a select number of other people who are maintaining the data on Plant Places. But then we also have the customer. Is the customer a nursery manager? Or is the customer a homeowner who wishes to decorate, or maybe a business owner who wishes to decorate? So, okay, we have to define that. Do we need a different app for each person, or are the options on the app based on who's logged in? That's another option. So that's kind of tricky. Consider what problem you're solving and consider your audience. Both very important things to consider when you're thinking about your app. Okay. Next, data. Where will you find data? This is another very important consideration. Think about the data that's available to you on the phone. You have the user's contact list, if you ask the user for permission to see that. And one big principle, don't ask for permission for something unless you're actually going to use it, because especially in today's day, we need to be a little bit paranoid about the information that we're making available. So we have data on the phone that the user might have. We also might have data that the user has captured and placed onto the phone, okay, like a photo album. Okay, so if I go to search by color on Plant Places Mobile, and what it's going to do is it's going to bring up, and forgive me, this is an emulator, which in other words, it's acting like the phone. which happens to be a nice way for me to demonstrate some things. But it does run a bit slowly, especially right now. I have a lot running on my computer, so it is going to run much, much slower than you would see on an actual device. So notice that we have a couple of options here. Number one, we can take a new photo, or we can open an existing image. So you see that taking a new photo is gathering information where the user is currently situated. So if I'm taking a picture, naturally it's going to be a picture of something around me. Okay, by the way, one thing you'll notice is that while this is development, excuse me one second. Excuse me. While this is development, it still is pulling live advertisements. There are certain ways I can control which ads appear, but most of that is honestly fairly random. So local rehab centers, I didn't put that ad there myself. Excuse me again. So, okay, now the other option is open existing image, and that means an image which is on the user's phone. I am going to warn you, what you're about to see is one of those things that I know can be improved on Plant Places Mobile. It really should bring up a gallery view. Instead, it brings up a list view, and that bothers me. Kind of like a forewarning, if when you're developing your mobile device. When I bought my first house, I thought, okay, I'll save some money. I can do a lot of home repairs myself. Probably not a good idea, because I would do certain home repairs and I'm an amateur at it, so I would do things wrong, and those things would bother me. Like I put insulation in the attic. I knew with certain things I didn't do correctly. I tried to install just a hose from a dishwasher. I didn't do that right. These things always bothered me. It's the same with your app. You'll have a good idea of what's wrong and it will bother you. So when I click on open existing image, what I really should see here are little thumbnails of pictures, but I don't. What I end up seeing is a list of files. And forgive me one second, I have this in debug mode now. We're going to talk about this in just a minute, but I need to go ahead and play this through. There we go. Debugger lets us see what's going behind the scenes in our mobile app. Very, very valuable. Okay, again, see, what we have here is a list of images. That's not good usability. The user's expecting to actually see the images themselves. Check back in September. I hope to have this so it's actually a gallery view, a much more user-friendly view. In any case, I'm going to click on Promo Graphic. Okay, and this is an image that exists on this phone. Okay, click on Promo Graphic, and now what it's going to do, it's going to open this image, which is an image I just preloaded onto the phone. It's going to open this image, and it's going to find the top 12 colors from this image. Okay, so what's our source of data here? Our source of data is the image itself. Okay, and this image, it's just one I loaded onto the phone. I'm going to go now, one second. Okay, if you go to the Plant Places store on let's see here, one second please. If you go to the Plant Places store on the Google Play Store, you'll see this image here. Let me scroll to the right a bit. It is, basically it's this flower, which is the flower of the calycanthus plant. Okay, with some text laid on top of it. That's basically what that image is. I put some text on top of it. You'll see it pulled out. I don't know how well this is going to look on the recording, but you'll see it pulled out some mauve colors, some purples, things like that. Okay, it pulled out the green from the Plant Places image. And again, it may be hard to see on the recording, but each one of these colors is unique. Some of them look similar, like this green and that green. This green is actually a little bit lighter. A few of these purples and browns look similar. Each color here is unique. As a matter of fact, this is one of the few screens in the Plant Places mobile app I actually am happy with. I knew I wanted to do search by color. I didn't know how I wanted to present that to the user. My first thought was to have the user tap on the photo and it would identify the color the user tapped on. The problem is if you tap on a photo maybe has 1,000 pixels. Which pixel did you happen to find? With this app, what it did is it looks at the photo, it scans it, and it finds the top 12 colors, then gives that to the user in an interface where the user can say, oh, okay, which one of these do I want? Now, you didn't see it because it was off screen, but a little message popped up with those directions that said, tap the color and find the plant that you want. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I can pick any of these except for the green, which comes from the stylized P logo. But let's say I tap this color right here. Remember I said this flower's from the calycanthus, okay? I tap that color, and again, forgive it's a little bit slow on the emulator, but what it's going to do is it's going to bring up a list of plants that have that color. Okay, it pulled up Rudbeckia here. That'll work. I was hoping to actually get a complete match with the Calycanthus. Let me choose a slightly different color. There's a little bit of tolerance where it will, where it says, okay, this color plus or minus. Let me pick, I could probably go with either of these purples. Try the lighter purple to start with. And you see what the idea is here. The idea is you see a flower in nature and you want to know what it is. You can take a photo of the flower and then do a color search with your phone and it will tell you what the flower is. Alternatively, um, Alternatively, you can try to match a flower with a color, say, of your house or something like that. Once again, I didn't get calycanthus. When I ran through this earlier, I did. Let me try a little bit darker purple. If this isn't the calycanthus, then we'll just go with whatever we get. But okay, so I tap on the color. Now, where did that information come from? That information came from my phone. Okay, still no luck on the calycanthus. We won't worry. We'll go ahead. We'll pick African daisy. How about that? So still no. So we got the information from the phone, from the photo album which exists on the phone, or we could use a live camera. One trick is that with a live camera, you see it has a little loading message that comes up here. With a live camera, that's a bit difficult to use in an emulator. And again, an emulator is a piece of software, as we see here, that acts like an actual phone. Camera's a bit difficult. It's supposed to trigger the webcam on the laptop. With Android, I have not had much luck getting that to work. With BlackBerry, I have, but not with Android. Not so much luck there. In any case, what it's going to do now is go out to the Plant Places website, and it's going to find, in this case, the detail page for the osteopermum, the African daisy. I believe that's what the osteopermum is. Here we go, osteopermum. Okay, and it's going to show this to the user. So now where are we getting information? And where did we get that color information? Well, that came from the Plant Places website. So notice what we're doing is we are getting information, we are creating value by joining information from two different sources. If we scroll up here a little bit, see, hopefully it'll stop. If we scroll up here, we'll see these are the colors in this plant that it sampled. Okay, those are the colors that it sampled from this plant, and that's what it was trying to match with. It went with a bit darker than I would prefer. I'm going to pull this off to the side and see if I can find a closer match. But in any case, we're matching color data from plantplaces.com with data that we've sourced from our phone. So think about the kind of data that you could get from the user's phone. You could, as we said, the contacts list. You could get things like the camera, the GPS, okay, the latitude and longitude of the user, all kinds of things you can do with that. Think about that. If you know where the user is, what can you tell, what information can you provide to the user? You'll see that one all the time when you're doing things like a restaurant review or something like that. You'll see that one quite a bit. So, okay, I clicked on a different color off screen here. So think about aggregation of data. And I have one thing that you might want to consider also is something called a web service. By the way, I did click a different color. Sorry, I was a little bit disappointed I didn't get the color I wanted there. Let me show you what I just did. It's what I meant to do earlier. Back to our color selection. This time I click this kind of mauve color down here. I select that color. What it's going to do, it's going to take that color, convert it to zeros and ones, okay, To a computer, colors are a combination of red, green, and blue. Anything that you see on a computer monitor is a combination of red, green, and blue. So what it did now is it took the red, green, and blue data, it sent it to plantplaces.com, and it said, can you tell me what plants have this red, green, and blue data? And one of the plants that came back was finally the calycanthus, the one I was trying to bring up earlier. This is actually that flower that we were looking at, a calycanthus. So we click on calycanthus. Now it's going to go to the detail page and it's going to show us pictures, and we can confirm, yes, that is the plant that I was looking for. That's the flower I was looking at. So combining data from multiple sources. Consider this very carefully. If you're not using at least some kind of data that is inherent on the mobile app, ask yourself, does it really need to be a mobile app? Or should it just be a web page that's styled for mobile? Because when you're doing a mobile app, you're putting a lot of investment in that user interface, okay? And because of the way mobile apps work, you have to write an app once for iPhone. You can't just take that and put that on Android. You actually have to rewrite it for Android, and you have to rewrite it for Windows Mobile or Nokia, whatever you would happen to use, BlackBerry. So if you're writing a mobile app, make sure you're actually using some data that you're getting from the mobile device. If not, ask yourself, is a mobile app what you really need, or do you just want a well-styled web page that will look good on the mobile device? Speaking of which, take a look at this. And you see how, again, some of this is off screen, but you see how we're trying to get a lot of information onto a small view area here. You see this? Notice that this is what I really wanted to see. Sorry, hold that thought. See this? These are colors sampled from the calycanthus. There's that kind of mauve color, purple, yellow. Okay, see those colors there? Now I'm going to scroll up a little bit. Okay, keep going, scroll up. And what we'll see, lots of information on this plant. Here's some bloom data. Lots of good information. This is a really nice plant, the calycanthus. As I scroll a little bit more, we will see some photos, including that very same flower that we took. So let's see. Here we go. Here we go. We'll let it catch up to us here. And we'll see the very distinct dark purple mauve-colored calycanthus flower. Okay, looks like, sorry, the recording slowed down there for a second, so I paused. Okay, and there we go. That's not the exact same photo, but that is a very similar calycanthus flower. And you see how we did the search by color. So color from the photo gallery in the phone combines with color sampled from this flower on plantplaces.com, and boom, we have a match of data. We're taking advantage of something inherent from the phone, which is the photos or the camera, okay? And we're matching that with data which is available on the web. Think very carefully about that. One thing that we have is something called a web service. It ends up in the world of programming. There are some places where you can get data for free off the web. This is something to consider if you're making an app. So here we go. This website is called xmethods.net. I use this quite a bit. Now this is a bit technical and complicated for our class, so I wouldn't plan on actually doing any implementations for this, but you can at least search this site or look at this site and see some of the information that's publicly available on the web. And what's nice about this information, because it's called a web service, that means that it follows a standard machine readable format. In other words, it is easy for your app to read the data in and do something with it. Okay, weather forecast service, that's a popular one. GeoIP, this is huge. This is huge. GeoIP will allow you to take an IP address. Now let's stop there. What's an IP address? An IP address is kind of like a telephone number for your computer. It's a telephone number for any computer. So if you go to a website like Plant Places, what you're doing is you're taking the name plantplaces.com and you're asking what is the telephone number or the address for the server or the computer that's running plantplaces.com. Okay? So you're resolving that vanity name, which is plantplaces.com. You're resolving that to what's called an IP address, an Internet Protocol address. Okay? Now, when you make a request on a browser, in other words, when you go to plantplaces.com, it's going to generate some information and it's going to send that information back to you. Okay? It needs to know how to reach you. Okay? It needs to know how to reach you. And for that, you need to send your telephone number to plantplaces.com. So there's a two-way exchange here. I'm going to do something on the command line called ping. Ping plantplaces.com. What it will try to do, and because of firewalls, it oftentimes can't do this. What it will try to do is it will try to give me back the phone number for plantplaces.com. There we go, 74.55.91.162. That's the telephone number, okay, for plantplaces.com. So ping will tell me, can I see plantplaces.com? I'm going to open a new browser page, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to HTTP. Okay, and then we'll try 74.55.91.162. Again, that's the IP address. Port 80 is the default port for HTTP, or in other words, the web. And let's see what we get here. Okay. This actually goes to the web host, so it has redirected me. Yeah, that's actually going to the web host, so it's redirected me, assuming that I got. Yeah, it doesn't know what I want to get. But many times if you do an IP resolution like that, you can just type the IP address in directly, and you'll go to that web page. Okay. Okay, if I do ping inquirer, well, that actually be news. Oh, I don't want to do that. That's behind a paywall. Ping google.com. I'm sure this happens before. 173.194.46.72. Let's try that one. Okay, 173.194.46.72:80. Okay. And there we go. Okay, and we have Google. You see that? So this, if we put the phone number in here, it's just like if we put Google in there and went there straight ourselves. So what does this have to do with web services? Well, a GeoIP service. One moment, please. A GeoIP service will take that telephone number, that IP address, and it can give us a rough idea of where a user is located. It won't give us things like a user's name or a user's address or anything like that, but it can generally give us a rough idea of where our users are coming from, which can tell us, who uses our site, what languages do they speak, where are they located, things like that. Very valuable information. Okay, more things we'll find. Okay, Bible verse finder, currency converter, stock quote service. A lot of these are self-explanatory. SMS. Okay, map IP address to country. So if you're thinking about combining data and you want to look for data that you can add to your website, Xmethods is a good listing of web services where this information can be made available to your website. Something very nice to consider. Okay, next, Storyboard. Okay, don't underestimate this. Storyboarding, we're going to look at, there are a few ways to do this, and one that we're going to use in class. We'll discover this in a couple of weeks, but I do want to show it to you now. One thing we're going to look at in class is something called Fluid UI, which is a web-based storyboarding app. What storyboarding is, it's just like what you would have with a play or a movie or a script of some kind. It's a way where you can define the navigation within your website. So here I have two screens. I can draw navigation from one to the other. The Fluid UI, I'm very impressed with this. They have it really works well for mobile because they have a lot of mobile UI widgets like we see here. And what you can do is you can drag and drop these onto your screen on the right side. Okay, so you can mock up the screen. You can mock up the screen. This is really important. This is really important. Why? Why do we want a storyboard? We want to save time. And when I wrote the Plant Places mobile app, there are many times I just kind of started writing screens and gluing them together later. One of the quality guidelines is we can't put anything in the app and deploy it that we don't need. In other words, we should only put in the app things that we're going to use. We cannot have any screens that we're not using. That just takes up a lot of space and it's hard to manage. When I wrote this app, I did this image search screen many times, the color match search screen. I did many different iterations for that. At first I thought, well, okay, maybe taking a picture with the camera and opening an image from the gallery, maybe those should be two different things. And so I wrote two different screens. And then the actual screen that shows the picture and the colors, this screen here, this screen really took a while before I found something that I liked. I was very careful on the screen. This screen you can tilt, by the way. You can tilt it. It'll still work. I really had to mess around with that. I wanted to make sure that I made it very easy for the user to pick a color. Okay, I wanted to make it very obvious what the options were to either take a new photo or open an existing image. These are things that I spent a lot of time with. In that process, I threw away a lot of work, okay, which was a waste. I made a lot of screens I didn't like. I threw them away, okay. Things like where can I put an advertisement where a user's likely to click on it? Because if the user clicks on it, I make money, okay. That's why we want a storyboard. We want to think these out before we actually do the work of writing the app. And that can save you a lot of time if done right. So think about storyboarding. If you don't like Fluid UI, there are plenty of other options, things like PowerPoint, and you could even mock it up in HTML. Okay. Next, this is a big question. What devices do you want to support? And no matter what you choose here, there's a consequence. One option is, I want to support the two biggies. I want to support Android and iPhone. The consequence there is, you're going to end up doing twice the work. You have to write it once for iPhone, you have to write it a second time for Android. Would you be better doing it for one of those platforms and doing it well, or would you be better doing it for both of the platforms and doing it half as well? Okay, that's a consideration. If you choose iPhone, well, okay, iPhone in the US has about 40% of the market share. Android has a little over 52% market share. So you're cutting out a big audience there. Worldwide, it's even more strange. Worldwide, it's even more different. Worldwide, internet. If you're looking at an international app, Android has about 75%. iPhone has about 20%. Okay. I've looked this up on the internet, so I mean, don't take my word for it. Oh, well, I saw something that says something else. Don't take my word for it. I was just looking at some statistics recently, but don't quote me on that. Feel free to do your own research and find that for yourself. That's my disclaimer. Since I'm putting this on YouTube, surely somebody would call me out and tell me I've had the wrong numbers. So there's my disclaimer. Do your own research. Okay, now let's say you do it for Android. Well, then iPhone people, and trust me, this is something that I deal with because Plant Places Mobile is only available on the Android platform right now. iPhone people are going to continuously ask you when it's going to be ready for iPhone, and when you tell them it's not, they will give you every reason in the world on why it should be and how you're stupid if it's not. So, as I said, Plant Places Mobile is Android only. Okay, why Android only? Well, because for a couple reasons. Everybody who is an administrator in Plant Places has an Android phone. That's reason number one. So that's the number one focus, is do it in Android. Reason number two, to develop an iPhone app legally, you have to have a Mac, which I don't have, and you have to pay $100 a year for a developer license. Plant Places Mobile is free software. I couldn't justify that cost. That's all. It's just a, cost versus benefit. A lot of the people in this class probably have a Mac, so that's probably not a big decision for you as it is for me. I didn't want to have to buy new hardware, was part of my limitation. Also, I just have a very limited amount of time and decided to just pick one platform, focus on it. Okay, once you've made that decision, if you are an iPhone developer, so if you do have a Mac, if that's not an issue for you, things get a little bit better because how many versions of the iPhone are there? Not many. Not many, right? We have 3, 4, maybe 5 coming out. Very standard, which is nice for developers. Then we have the iPad. Okay. Very standard. Now let's take a look at my Android friends, which, as I mentioned, includes me. How many Android devices are there? Wow, lots. Because Android is something that different manufacturers can make an Android phone. So we have different resolutions, different features. These manufacturers like LG, Samsung, Panasonic, they compete with each other, so they're always trying to one-up each other by adding more features. As a developer, this is more for us to manage. Okay, we have to think about, well, how would I make it for this resolution or this other resolution? A little bit more thinking when you're an Android developer because there are a lot more Android devices. Okay, so which ones are you going to support? Are you going to do a phone only? Are you going to do a phone plus tablet? Are you going to do tablet only? What about TV? I have a Google TV. I can run Android apps on it. There's an Apple TV. Watches, wearable devices are coming out. So think very carefully about what you want to support. When you deploy your app on the store, you can tell it what devices you want to support. Don't tell it any more than you are willing to support, because if you say, oh yeah, it'll run on everything, the consequence there is you'll get bad reviews, because if you don't tune it for devices that where people are actually using it, they might say, well, it looks terrible here. Okay, so you want to make sure that you get very good reviews. So very careful thing to consider, what devices do you want to support. Next, let's take a look at the integrated development environment. This is a tool that you're going to use quite a bit when developing a mobile app. I'm going to skip ahead one slide now, and let's take a look at what is an IDE. An integrated development environment allows you to gather everything that you need for your program. And so when I say write, I mean write the source code, also do the layouts, also include any images that you need. Okay? So we'll write the source code, which is the logic of our program. Okay. After that, we'll compile it. So what we're doing is compile means take it from human readable language, words and things like that, turn it into machine language. What does that mean? Well, if you open up a computer or a phone, you won't see a bunch of words in there. You'll see a bunch of semiconductors. And semiconductors will communicate with pulses of electricity. So basically, it's like an on or an off switch. That's what we're seeing. So we need to go from the language that we communicate in to this machine language. That's what the compile step is for. Okay? After we compile, we can run it or we can debug it. Okay, so run it means we would actually run it on the phone or on an emulator. Debug is just like running, but with one additional enhancement. With debugging, we can set what's called a breakpoint in our code, and we can watch it execute one line at a time. This is really, really valuable, especially when you're writing a program or when you're trying to figure out why a program is not working. If you debug it, you can step through it one line at a time and see what's actually happening. Okay, so what are integrated development environments? For Android development, many times you'll use Eclipse, which I'll show you in just a moment. There are some others available. There's IDEA. There's also Android has its own SDK or its own development environment. But most people will use Eclipse. Good news with Eclipse is that it's very commonly used in industry. You can use it to write Android programs if you have an Android plugin, which is kind of like an add-on that goes into Eclipse. You can use it to write Android programs. You can also use it to write other Java programs. So it's very widely used. A lot of people have Eclipse. Other good news is it's written in Java, which means it is multi-platform. So you can run Eclipse on Windows, on any Unix or Linux distribution, and on Mac. So whatever hardware you have, you can run Eclipse on it. You can write your programs in Eclipse. For iPhone, the development environment is called Xcode, which, to my knowledge, only runs on a Mac, which is the limitation that I have because I don't own one. I don't own a Mac, so can't run Xcode. Um, for Windows Phone, they'll use Visual Studio. Visual Studio, I've only known that to be run on a Windows machine. I'm sure somebody somewhere has figured out a hack to run it on something else, but Visual Studio is primarily used on Windows. I'll show you an example of that as well. Another thing our IDE will do is it will package the application for deployment. So when we release our software to, say, the Play Store or the App Store, or whatever store you prefer, we don't take all of the graphic files individually and put them up there and then the source code individually and put it up there. We actually take an entire package. For Android, this is something called an APK. The APK contains all of our code, all of our images, everything we need to make the program run, the permissions, everything that we need, and then we will sign it so that we'll say we are the ones who are deploying this application. Those are things we can do in an IDE. IDEs are a bit overwhelming at first. I'm going to go ahead and bring up Eclipse. Okay. So I know you can only see part of this. The trick is it doesn't look really good on a small screen like I have. But this is Eclipse. I'm going to go to Java EE over here. Lots of buttons, lots of frames, lots of things going on. Plant Places Android. This is the Plant Places mobile app. So I'll show you some parts of it. Okay. And okay, we have a couple of add-ins. The advertisement jar. So this is basically a DLL or a jar or an archive, a library, if you will. Library is probably the best term that supports advertisements within our app. The Plant Places mobile app is free and ad supported, and so that's what pulls the advertisements in. If we go under SRC, you'll see some little guys here. This is the source code. Okay, this is the source code. So for instance, when we opened an image, we went to File Chooser. Okay, now if I go over here, and we'll expand this, we can see a little more of it on the screen. This is the File Chooser. This is the source code of the File Chooser. Okay, so you see these are words. They aren't sentences. Like we couldn't read this aloud and it would make sense to somebody who's never seen code before. But they are words. Private. Whoops, sorry, something just changed on my computer. Okay, private, static, string, folder, folder. Okay, so you see it's a little bit of symbols and some interesting words, but they are words. They're not just ones and zeros. Okay, and this is the logic that's saying go out to the device itself and see what folders we have. Okay, again, more symbols. We have open curly, close curly. If you're continuing on with the certificate and you're getting into some of the programming courses, you'll use a lot more of this. Okay, this will become old school before too long. On list item click, what happens when we actually click on an item in the list? What do we do? What we're usually going to do is we're going to pick a file, open it up, and then we're going to run it into the program that parses the file and looks for the top 12 colors. So this is Java. What we're looking at is Java. This is source code. This is what's called a .java file. If we look at the top, we'll see the name of the file is filechooser.java. .java means it is a text file. Okay? It is a text file that we can edit. What will happen is we will compile this into something called a .class file. So it will be the same file name, file chooser, but instead of .java, it will be .class. Okay, so for an app like Plant Places Mobile, this is one file that we're looking at here. Let me show you all of the different files that come together to make this app. This is just source code. These are all of the source code files that make the app. Color capture file array. Color capture is the one that actually does the color logic. So that's the one that will pull on an image, dissect it, find its top 12 colors, so on and so forth. See, we get quite a few files here, but then we open this folder, even more. Open this folder, even more. Open this folder, even more. Open this folder, and we have one more. So there's a lot of programming logic behind this app. And that's just to kind of set your expectations on the amount of work it's going to take. Now, the app does a lot of things besides color capture. We've only looked at color capture so far. It also uses GPS so that you can GPS a plant that you see. It also allows you to have your own plant collection. It also shows you what plants are near you on a map. So there are a lot of things that it does, but you see there's a lot of logic involved. Okay. I'm going to click on Gen. Okay. Don't worry too much about this file. Those are Android specific. As a matter of fact, allow me to close these up a little bit. Okay. I'll Ben. Okay. See this here, plant places android.apk. That is the packaged mobile app. That is the entire app. Okay, so when I go to the Google Play Store, and I believe we already pulled that link up. Let me go back there again. Okay, actually, let me show you my view. This is what you see as just a member of the general public. You'll see the store listing where it will describe, it has some screen captures here. So this is the store listing that the user will see. Okay, now for me, I see a different listing. I'm going to go to Google Play Developer Console. Okay, I've been here before, obviously. Okay, this will tell me a lot of very interesting information. Who has downloaded the app? Right now, 113 active downloads, 151 total. Not bad. Not bad given that it was released in February. I click on the app here. Okay, and I'm going to choose APK. Okay, now, what's the APK? Version 5, this 5th build. When was it last uploaded? February 26th. What's its status? It's in production. Okay, that means it's downloadable. If you go and download Plant Places Android right now, this is the version that you will get. Now under that we have some previous versions. Version 2 was actually the first one released. A note, if you're developing software, never make version 1. Who wants to download version 1 of software? This was after many, many months of testing to make sure that the software worked as described without causing harm to the phone, without running uncontrolled or anything like that. So this was after a lot of testing. As you can see, that was released on February 2nd, and then a new version on February 25th. February 25th introduced a lot of new features, things like the ability to record the bloom date of a plant and when a plant is sold, where a plant is sold. Also, the big improvement was what we call threading. Threading improves performance so that the program doesn't lock up a lot. Now, you'll notice that there was another release right after that, and then yet another. There were 3 releases in a row, very quickly. There was a last-minute feature request that was easy for me to do, so I went ahead and did it in one night. Because only a few people had taken the update, if I did another update right away, a lot of people would skip this intermediate update, so I decided to quickly do it. Unfortunately, when I released that, someone reported a bug right away, and there was a legitimate bug that I was very nervous about. So I very quickly released a new version. There we go, version 5. So you see, these were both released on the same day because version 5 fixes a bug that was in version 4. Needless to say, this is what we call an APK. And if we go back to our development environment, we see Plant Places Android APK. That is the APK. So when I choose to update a new version, upload new APK, if I click on this button, okay, I'm actually going to go out and pick this APK file, and that will contain everything that makes up the program. Okay, so allow me to collapse these. We can have a little more room. It's a little bit tricky. to fit everything in this recording, so I have to be a little bit tricky. Resources. Notice I have drawable HDPI, LDPI, MDPI, and XHDPI. Okay, remember we said consider your device. Remember that thought? Consider your device. Are we doing on a wearable piece of hardware, a phone, a tablet, a television? Well, an icon that looks good on a phone might not look so good on a television. Okay, so if I go to drawable LDPI, what we're going to see is which one? Sorry, I forget which one it is. No, it's either Icon or Favico. I think it's actually Favico. This is the icon that you see when you on your home screen when you click on the app. Okay, it's coming up on my other screen now. So just one second. I'll see. Okay, I picked the wrong one. It is Favico. Okay, let me go to Favico. Okay, take a look. We're under LDPI. Take a look at that. That's the stylized P logo that you'll see on your phone when you click on the app. Okay, now I'm going to go to, let's go to HDPI, and I'm going to click on Favico again. Okay. Do you see any difference between this and the one I just showed you? Let's compare them. It's the same image, but a different size, different resolution. This image would look a lot better on a tablet than this one if it were rescaled. This image is going to look a lot better on a mobile device. If we tried to just resize this manually, it would look really grainy and pixely. See that? Notice that those two are about the same size. And again, this is probably hard to see over a recording, but you see that this one's fairly smooth. This one, when we enlarge it, is very pixelated. So if you look around the border, you can kind of see individual pixels because it doesn't resize well. Okay, so to give the user a nice consistent user experience, we actually have to make 4 different sizes of our application icon or our application logo. Low density, small one, medium, high, extra high. Extra high is new, so I actually didn't make one for extra high. I probably should, but that's a new one. So this is where we'll put images. Now I'll show you something very important that you want to consider early on. Take a look at values, and this is an XML file. I'll click on this. Now this is not a source code file, it's an XML file, which is a plain text file. It's hourglassing, it's going to take a moment to load. Strings.xml contains all of the prompts in our application, all of the words that you see in our application. I'm going to go over here to strings.xml, and what you'll see is all of the words in the application, plantplaces.com mobile, logon form, username, password, logon activity, create new account. These are all prompts that you'll see in the application. They're all here, and this is the only place where they exist. It's very, very important that they all live in this file. And that's an easy thing to do in Android. Let me go to values ES. Okay, now you see an identical file under values ES. So let's click on it and see what we have there. Okay, so the same file name, strings.xml. Sorry, it's hourglassing again. I have a lot running on my computer. When I do these recordings, I get everything I need and load it up in advance. And the idea is that way we don't have to wait for programs to start. The only trick is I end up then running a whole bunch of different stuff on my computer all at once. So it ends up kind of sucking it dry on memory. So, okay, so strings.xml. Now, take a look at this file and what makes it different. Okay, take a look at this file. What makes it different from the last one? Okay, that's interesting. We have a few unique letters here, don't we? As you probably figure out, this is Spanish. This is Spanish. One really cool thing about Android, and I'm speaking on behalf of Android, I'm sure this is the case with other phones as well, is that when you set your language preference for the phone, if you set it to English, it goes to values, strings.xml, uses that. If you set it to Spanish, it goes to values ES, grabs that for every application on your phone. It's very easy to make an app multilingual. Think about that very seriously. Unless you are absolutely certain that all your users are going to be in the US and know only English, think about internationalization very carefully. And here's why. When I was an undergrad, back in the 90s, when I was in a programming course in undergrad, we assumed that everybody knew English and that all screens were 12 inches. And that's simply not the case. Now, for plant places, if you look domestically, if you look in the United States, here's our competition. Well, there's Dave's Garden, Floridata. Those are two websites that are very similar to plant places. They don't have search by color, at least I don't think they do. I don't think they have it on an Android app, I'll say that. Then there's the U.S. Department of Agriculture, okay, and then there's the Missouri Botanical Garden. So they focus, we need to find something that sets us apart from them. We need to find either information or technology or a combination of both that makes people want to use our site and not those others. Okay? Well, there's a lot of competition in the US. Now, partially with my full-time job and partially with my vacations, I have a rule: when I take vacation, I have to use my passport. It has to be a passport required journey. I've been to a lot of different countries. And when I'm in a different country, I'll go to a botanical garden, take a lot of pictures, get a lot of GPS locations, and then put these plants on plantplaces.com. What I have found is there's a lot less competition as I go to other countries. A lot less competition. A lot of the countries I've been to have been in Latin America. So it makes sense, if that's a market, I'm going to try and visit, it makes sense that I should offer this in the local language as well. Okay? Because maybe my competitors aren't there yet. Maybe that's an opportunity that I have. If you're thinking about writing an app and you have a profit motive, which probably you do, even if it's not money, you have probably some motivation to be known or whatever it might be. Think very seriously about internationalization, something you want to consider very carefully. Okay, and listen, with mobile phones, it's easy. You actually, if you try, you cannot be international. But if you just put in a little bit of effort, then you can have an internationalized app. Okay. Finally, one other thing are the layouts. If we take a look at, let's see, file chooser. This might not have anything really great for us. Actually, probably camera is the one that I want. But this is what we'll call a WYSIWYG editor. What you see is what you get. This does take a while to load. This will take a little while to load. But with this editor, you can drag and drop widgets onto the editor, and that's what your screen's going to look at. So yeah, this usually takes a couple minutes to load. So our layout is an XML file, again, a text-based file that describes where all of the icons and all of the little widgets that the user click, where this will go. So I'll tell you what, we have more to talk about, but we're approaching about 53 minutes now, and at that point I start to get a little bit uncomfortable. I really want to save and upload the video. So let me go ahead and pause this right now, save and upload. When we come back, we'll talk more about deployment, more about what programming is, and then if we have time this week, we will get into user interface design as well. So go ahead and pause it and upload it there, and we'll have another 45, maybe 50 minutes. We'll see how it goes. Have another video for this week. Thank you.